Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, I'll be walking you through a little weeknight cook with me, and it's all about Puerto Rican comfort food. I'm going to be making some white rice, some sweet plantains, some steamed chuletas Puerto Rican style, and some stewed gandules that are just delicious. So let's get into it. All right, so if you followed any of my other cook with me's, you know that the very first thing I like to do whenever I prepare dinner is to start preparing and cooking my meat, because that's usually the thing that takes the longest to cook. And especially if I'm going to be braising some meat, I want to make sure that I'm giving that carne plenty of time to get nice and tender. Therefore, that's why it's the first thing I like to do. So I have here about 1.5 pounds of some pork chops with the bone in. I have already washed them with white vinegar. After I wash them with white vinegar in a little cold water, I just rinse them and drain them. I drain them, but I don't really rinse them with water because I like the acidity of the vinegar. That's going to help tenderize the chuletas while they are braising. So after that, I transfer them over to a plate, and then I drizzle them with a little oil on both sides. The oil is going to help the seasoning stick to the meat. And for my all-purpose seasoning, I'm using Goya Adobo, very traditional in Puerto Rican cooking, or maybe rather in modern Puerto Rican cooking, because back in the day, there wasn't Goya Adobo. So what would they use? They would use salt, garlic powder, etc., black pepper, and that's all that's in Goya Adobo. Goya Adobo is a very simple all-purpose seasoning. So if you do not have this, you can make your own by just using a blend of some salt, some garlic powder, oregano, a little turmeric for that yellow color, and you're good to go. So because I have about 1.5 pounds, and this is the only seasoning that is going to have salt in my dish, I'm adding like about 1/2 teaspoon or 3/4 teaspoon of adobo, but honestly, I'm just eyeballing it. You're going to add it to your taste. And then I usually do this before I season my meat, but I like to get a knife and just kind of pierce through it just so that the seasonings can penetrate my meat, because I am going to marinate this for at least 20 minutes in my refrigerator. All right, so even though adobo has garlic powder, I'm going to add a little extra garlic, because why not? If you want to add fresh garlic or minced garlic, you may do so. And again, I'm just eyeballing here. I want to say about 1/2 teaspoon. I love garlic. It's my favorite seasoning. So just going to add a little generous amount. And then I'm going to go in with some ground oregano. Again, this is already in my adobo, but I am adding these extra spices that are already in adobo without adding the extra salt. And I don't want my chuletas to taste like a giant salt bomb, but I do want them to be nice and flavorful. All right, next up is a little extra black pepper. Give that a good amount. It's about 1/4 teaspoon. And then if you have any other seasonings like some dried cilantro flakes, parsley, you can add that as well. All right, now I'm gonna go ahead and add a little extra flavor and also some color to my chuleta. So I'll be using the salt-free Goya Sazón. This Sazón is particularly hard to find. I found it at my local grocery store that carries a very large selection of Goya products, and I was lucky enough to find it. But you can use regular Sazón, and if you don't want to use Sazón, you can just use a little bit of ground annatto powder, which is something that I commonly used in my earlier videos. You can use whatever you want to color your chuletas, but of course, annatto powder, which is the main ingredient in Goya Sazón, is the preferred coloring agent for Puerto Rican food. And I'm not adding the whole packet. I'm just adding about 1/3 of the packet because I do not want bright orange chuletas, because for me personally is not appealing. I want it to be flavorful and colorful, but not bright orange. So just gonna add a little bit. And if you are using regular sazon, be sure to adjust how much adobo or all-purpose seasoning you use, because regular sazon already has salt in it. All right, so now that my chuletas are nice and seasoned, I'm gonna add about a teaspoon of white vinegar. If you remembered in the beginning, I mentioned that when I washed them, I didn't really rinse them that much with water, but I just wanted to add a little extra vinegar. It will not make your chuletas taste vinegary. It's just going to help tenderize your meat and also give it a little extra acidity. All right, let's marinate this for about 20 minutes, but you can marinate it in your fridge overnight. All right, so let's get this pot going for my chuletas. Now I have this set over medium-high heat, and I'm gonna make sure it's nice and hot. And then afterwards, I'm gonna add a little drizzle of some oil. And I'm also going to add a little pat of butter. Now that option is completely optional. You do not need to add butter, but I do like to add about a teaspoon of butter because it gives it really, really good flavor. Now, in Spanish, this style of chuletas that I'll be making, it's either called chuleta al vapor, which is commonly known in Puerto Rico as steamed pork chops. It's also called chuleta a la jardinera, chuleta al caldero, which I have a separate video on how I do that. And it's the same thing, but it's a little different. So if you want to check that video out, you may do so. It's a couple videos back, but same concept. I'm simply going to braise these pork chops in their spices with a little bit of water, and that's it. Super, super easy peasy. And I'm going to braise it until the liquid gets nice and reduced and you have like a really good broth. So I'm gonna go ahead and add my chuletas after I added my oil and my butter. I'm gonna try to evenly space them out. All right, so after I've added my chuletas, I am going to add a little medley of some peppers. These are honestly just some peppers that I had in my fridge that I did not want them to go bad. So if you have any like extra bell peppers that you need to use up, or some onions, some tomatoes, you can go ahead and slice them and add them in there if you want. Yeah, just any kind of veggies. Even like a little bit of mushrooms would be really, really good. Oh, that sounds really good. I think I'm going to do that next time. So, yeah. And then after I added my peppers, I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of water. I just eyeballed the water. I just added enough water to cover my chuletas 3/4 of the way. So I'm going to set my heat to medium-low, cover it, and just let it do its thing until dinner is ready. And up next, I'll be making my Gandules Guisados, which is just stewed pigeon peas, gungo peas, whatever you call them. And I'm going to start by adding a little bit of oil to my little baby caldero here. And I'm going to add about 1/4 cup of this uncured diced ham. You can also use cooked smoked ham. I always call it cooking ham, but honestly, I don't think that's correct, but it's just diced pre-cooked ham. It's going to give it really, really good flavor. You can also add a little bit of salchichon. You can also use 2 strips of chopped bacon. Anything with pork is going to give it good flavor. And if you don't want to add meat, then you don't have to. That's okay. I think they'll still taste delicious. It will alter the flavor a little bit, but it'll still be good. All right, so once my ham is nice and golden brown, I'm gonna add a little bit of some chopped white onion. This is about 1/4 of a cup of chopped white onion. It's going to give it a really, really good flavor. And I'm going to saute that until it's nice and soft and fragrant. All right, so once my onion is nice and soft, I'm gonna go ahead and add the rest of my ingredients. Gonna add about 1.5 tablespoons of some fresh sofrito. Now you may use store-bought, there's no shame in that. But I do have 2 videos on my channel on how to make sofrito. I have an authentic traditional version, and I also have a simple practical version for those that can't find certain ingredients. And then I'm going to add some tomato sauce. This is about 1/3 of an 8-ounce can of tomato sauce. I'm going to give that a good stir to combine. And so the tomato sauce and the sofrito is always like the foundation to a lot, or I want to say to most Puerto Rican stews. Anything that's stewed, it's always a combination of sofrito and tomato sauce. And then I'm going to add 1/2 packet of Sazón. I am using the salt-free version, but you may use the regular version, but I will need to adjust my salt content because that is salt-free. And then I'm going to add some Goya ham seasoning. I think I just add 1/2 packet. Yes, only 1/2 packet of this ham seasoning. And it's honestly perfect because I'm already using diced chopped ham. And then I'm adding about 2 teaspoons of some chopped pimientos. I also like to add a little bit of the liquid of the pimientos. It's a little acidic and it just gives it a really good bold flavor. And then a couple of stuffed Spanish olives. And then I'm going to add some mashed up gandules. I simply just scooped them up from the can and I mashed them up with a fork. Now, I do have a video on how I make traditional Gandules Guisados by adding some green banana dumplings. You can also use green plantain dumplings. But today, for this dinner, I did not have any green bananas on hand. Since the green bananas thicken the broth, since they are so starchy, I still want that nice thick broth. So since I don't have them, I mash up a little bit of the gandules, and that's going to help thicken up the broth so nicely. It's going to make it so rich and so delicious. Then I'm going to add a little bit of some ground oregano, just a pinch, not a lot, because that is a very, very strong seasoning, especially when it comes to adding it to gandules, which are already strong. And then I'm going to add the can of gandules with its liquid because the liquid has a lot of flavor. Now, don't be confused. This is dry pigeon peas, but they are not hard or anything like that. They're perfectly soft. I'm then going to fill up that can with water and add it to my pot. That measurement, it cannot get any easier than that. All right, now I'm gonna stir everything to combine. I will check for salt and I'll adjust accordingly. And you be sure to do the same thing as well. All right, now let's make some rice. I usually leave this for almost last because it's super quick and easy. But yeah, I'm just gonna add a little bit of oil, about 1.5 tablespoons. You adjust accordingly to your preference. And then I'm going to add a bit of salt. I add about 1 teaspoon for every 2 cups of rice. But again, adjust accordingly to how you like it. Then I'm going to add 3 cups of water. And then after I added my 3 cups of water, I added 2 cups of long grain rice. Something happened where I thought I was recording and I wasn't recording, so I didn't show me pouring my rice in, but I added 2 cups of long grain white rice and 3 cups of water. And yes, I do wash and rinse my rice for those who ask me frequently. So yeah, I have my heat set to high heat. All right, so once I add my rice, I bring it to a boil, and then once it comes to a boil, I set it to lowish, about the number 2, put the lid, and I let it do its thing. All right, and rice is just so easy. A lot of people get very intimidated by it, but it is like one of the simplest things you can make. You don't even need to use minute rice or anything. I mean, if you do, no shame to that, no shame, but I encourage you to learn how to make simple white rice by using fresh, raw ingredients because it's worth it. So yeah, so after my water came to a boil and I added the rice, I just set it to low heat, covered it, and it cooked in 25 minutes. Easy peasy. All right, so now that my rice is pretty much done and my gandules are at a low simmer, as well as my chuletas, I'm gonna do the very last thing to complete my meal, and it's to fry up this deliciously sweet, ripe plantain. As you see, the skin is super black and ripe, but the plantain on the inside is perfect. I'm gonna go ahead and slice these up in 1/2-inch slices until they're nice and golden brown. All right, let's see what we have here now that our dinner is complete. Remember I was talking to you about thickening the broth of my Gandules Guisado by smashing up some gandules? As you can see, that broth is rich and delicious. These gandules came out amazing, even without little bolita de guineo. Came out incredible. And so did everything else. Got my white rice, I got my platanos. My chuletas have been braising for like over an hour, so they are like fall off the bone tender. So good. And that is all for today's video. If you've enjoyed today's Cook With Me, please let me know in the comment section down below. I love reading each and every one of you comment. If you are new around here, welcome. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Give this video a thumbs up. It helps my channel a ton. And hit that notification bell so that you can be notified when a new video comes out. Until next time.